Eli says, what affects the price of these sector ETFs? Is it the price action of the underlyings, or is it the price action of the people trading the ETF directly?
Can I take
you
that?
want to answer?
Let's give it a tie.
Yeah, Eli, it's a wonderful question, Eli.
It's both. It's both.
Yeah, it's both.
When you look at the fund owns, all the major stocks in the energy sector, right? Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips are like the main ones. So when somebody buys XLE takes that money and purchases the individual stocks, right? So if you get money flowing into the fund, that trickles into the individual components, right? And then on the other side, if somebody's putting a bunch of money into Exxon directly and Exxon's stock price is going up, XLE owns Exxon. It's a shareholder of Exxon. And so it's going to boost the fund because Exxon is 10, 20% of the fund, right? So it works both ways. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where the demand comes from, whether it goes into the individual components or whether it goes into the fund. Both of them will drive kind of each other to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and people hate that answer, both, but it's true. It's like, okay, which one's first?
Well, but think about it intuitively, right? It's like, let's say nobody bought XLE, nobody, and everybody just bought Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and all these other energy stocks. Well, XLE is a basket that owns all those guys. Mm-hmm. It represents the sum total value of the individual components. So if the individual components are getting bought, the basket has to go up because that's what is in the basket, right? Yeah. And on the other side of it, if nobody bought Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and they just bought XLE doesn't just take that money and it just goes up in the bank and it's just
wait.
cash forward.
They don't put it in their checking account?
No. They invested in those stocks. They use
allocate
the funds to invest in what they're supposed to. Yeah.
And they allocate it based on their weighting of the fund.
Mm-hmm. Exactly correct. If they didn't do that, if they just did shenanigans, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot. People would be like, XLE, you are not doing what you were designed to do. I'm not going to put money in you because I have zero confidence that you're doing what you ostensibly, based on your prospectus, are supposed to do. They would never do that.
Efficient market theory.
Well, if they didn't actually buy those stocks, then obviously they wouldn't even be an ETF. The SEC would pull their license for that.
Yeah, it's just, think about it like this, Eli. Yeah. Either you're going to buy the shares or you're going to give the bank the ability to buy the shares, but the shares get bought.
Mm-hmm. Well, and actually, I would add one other thing, and it may not be specific to this sector ETF, but just in general, when you have a fund that starts to trade different than the value of the underlying holdings, there's an arbitrage opportunity. This is why the S&P 500 is like linked to the hip to those 500 stocks, because if there's a discrepancy between buying 500 stocks individually and the fund, then you can arbitrage it and make money for free. So they trade in alignment, like very, very close.
Oh, and algorithms love those situations.
Let's say,
but honestly, Tyler, we're talking fractions of pennies on the S&P.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah. Like it's not big.
Yeah, but it just shows you there's these mechanisms in place where the funds pretty much trade at what their value of the underlying holding is.
Mm-hmm.
Eli, I hope we answered your question, my friend.
We did, and I think one last thing we can do just in continuation here, just look at Exxon and Chevron real quick and look how correlated they are to XLE. I mean, you're literally going to see almost an identical chart. They don't always do this, but they are trading lock and step in pattern with the sector right now. Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, the biggest three in that space have very, very similar patterns. So
when volatility hits the market, even slight increases in volatility, almost everything trades identical.
Yeah.
It's not like fear impacts Conoco investors different from Exxon.